Greetings. This is Stasia Bliss, the Kundalini Queen. So, since I've been starting this series on managing life force energy, I have definitely been finding my own life force recalibrating itself, readjusting itself, because the more conscious we become of our life force, the more we begin to tune into the core of it, to where it is sprouting from within us. And as I trace this back in even conversation, even one-sided on this video broadcast, it still causes me to look at my own life force energy in a deeper way. So for me, having worked with this energy for some time, early in 2000 is when I had some very powerful awakening experiences with yoga, with especially Kundalini yoga, as I practiced it in India and learned it there from a tantric master who it was a magical experience, our meeting. It was my second time back to India, if you don't mind me sharing a moment story. And it was my first train ride down to Goa. I was heading back to the beach beauty, Shanti space I discovered at the end of the first year trip. It was only the last 2 weeks that I had visited Goa, and I vowed to return. So I was on a train from Bombay to Goa, and in my train car for that whole 12 hours was this man named Sam, and he had 3 children with him, his twin daughters, who were about 10, and his about 7-year-old son. And they'd been traveling around with him for some time in India, and he had been teaching Kundalini yoga that he also called ecstatic yoga or universal yoga, and Tai Chi. So as he told story after story of his life and why he'd gotten to where he was and what qualified him to be this tantric master he spoke of, or he introduced himself as, I became clear that the universe had directed our paths together and that I was to study with him. So after 12 hours of straight talking, this man can tell stories forever, and I truly loved everyone. He was a Sagittarius, like me, is a Sagittarius. I'm pretty sure he's still on the earth plane, even though I haven't spoken with him in some time. He disappeared into the jungles of Thailand last I heard from him. But I see his children on social media, and I send them love if they are watching. That was such a deep awakening experience for me there in India, where I first started to become aware of this powerful energy in my body. And truly, as it awakened in me, unthinkable and miraculous things began to occur in my life. And probably had I not been out of the country and in a strange, new, exciting land with very little rules placed on myself and no job to go to, just day in and day out of studying and running on the beach and walking barefoot in the sand and bathing in these freshwater pools and coating myself with clay and then swimming in the ocean and all these fantastical things that you dream of wanting to do someday. That opportunity was afforded me at, a fairly young and unconscious age maybe, but it is the seed of my awakening. Just prior to that, I had left. That was a few years before I had left a very strict religious upbringing. I had started to dabble in some psychedelic medicines to open my mind. I was reading all manner of books and meditating and feng shuiing my house and doing all these things. And my first trip to Asia really stirred me, really rocked me, really made me realize that my perspective was definitely not the only one, and that the country I'd been raised in had definitely not given me the vision that I saw there. So by the time I was having these Kundalini experiences, it was prior to meeting this teacher. I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand the sensations that were happening in my body. Probably had I not had some awesome textbooks. Yes. Like Bringers of the Dawn being dropped in my lap, and Saint Germain types of books and these things. Had I not had these accessible to me, thanks to my boyfriend at the time and some beautiful beings who were set along my path, I probably would have thought I was in grave danger of serious health concerns. Luckily, that was not the case, and by the time I met this man in India on the train and began to study with him, Kundalini yoga one day, Tai Chi the next, then back, then forth, over and over, and sun gazing without knowing really that I was, and experiencing myself very deeply and authentically. Then I started to be able to put languaging to what was occurring for me before, as my chakras had been opening, as my life force energy had been streaming in and amplifying itself through my system, and suddenly I had some more language. So I took myself back to India again the next year, and I studied at the Bihar Yoga Bharati in a more formal, more scholastic, ecclesiastical, but experiential, deep yogic immersion for 4 months. And I was never the same after that. So, gratefully, I was introduced to a completely different perspective on yoga. I was equipped with very good languaging to understand the spiritual mechanics of the body. And I was kind of wiped clean of my previous understanding of a surface experience of yoga, even with my body. And even with the energy systems, I suddenly had a very real life application in a hard, almost like jail, sorry to anyone in the school, but jail-like atmosphere where I was forced to stay on a strict schedule. It's very much opposite than my time in Goa, which was very free and very open and very ecstatic and very sensual and very nature oriented. This at the school was the exact opposite. It was very structured, and it was very time oriented, and it was very like, you will go by the rules, and you will not talk at this time, and you will only eat rice puffs on this day, and you will not get out. We'll bob wire you in, and you'll only speak on the phone once a week for 2 minutes, and you don't get out of here save once a week every other week for a couple of hours. I mean, it was very, very limiting. So where I'd stretched very far in one direction, I now brought myself very, close in. And those two experiences, those two polarities balanced out for me. And I do believe life affords us all these polarities so that we can learn to integrate both sides of the spectrum. I wanted to run away from that place almost every day. But at the end, I felt such a refinement of my nature, and where I had really opened myself in many ways to explore before, I really brought it and streamlined it in myself into a place that I felt like was truly me emerging. And so this journey of awakening, this Kundalini adventure, is that. It is an adventure. And if you are just beginning on it, it will take you in many spaces in your mind, in your emotions, in your relationships, and maybe in the world, if you're lucky, to interface with this energy in many ways so that you may become intimate with it. I can tell you about it all I can and all you want to listen, but truly it is your personal story that is going to be your Kundalini adventure. It is your awakening. And to manage it just means be aware. Don't judge yourself. Understand what part of the cycle you're in. Don't always be trying to rein it back into some version. See what version you're in. What part of the story are you in? Honor that part of the story. I'd have never experienced the myriad of things I had I kept reining myself in to a certain limited construct. And maybe that's just my wild Sagittarius nature, but I'm truly so, so grateful that life even opened these doors and that I would chance to say yes and run, sometimes bare-chested down the beach and swim naked in the ocean and have wild abandon there, learning about this wild energy in me that I could learn to tame, that I could learn where it is, where I want to feel it run free. And in my life right now, it's in my creativity and with my personal relationships with the close people in my life. This is where I like to see this energy, creatively run free and explore and have fun and be beautiful. But in the beginning, it was untamed and out there. And, sometimes we judge ourselves when we're in that stage of the awakening. We're like, oh my gosh, I've done these terrible things. I need to discipline myself. I need to stop. I need to, whip myself. I need to medicate myself. And, I'm not going to advocate completely against some of those things. Maybe not whipping yourself, but notice what part of the journey you're in. I'm not a big fan of medication, but I do know there are very special circumstances where that may be required for a time. Just be very cautious and aware of your neurotransmitters and their sensitivity to such things, and be in communion with your body when you ask, is this for me to do? So thank you for letting me share part of my story today. I hope that over the next 6 weeks, as we move into the holiday season, I've got my Christmas organite on here. I'm in the celebratory mood already because I've not really been in celebratory mood about Christmas since maybe 20 years ago. So I feel this like resurgence in me, this love resurgence in me. And so I hope to be able to share much of my stories, many things that I've experienced along this way over this next 6 weeks, if you will journey with me, because I do feel my life taking a more personal direction come the beginning of the year. I don't really know exactly how that's looking yet, or am I ready to vocalize, but I do want to take these times to share with you. So if you have any questions or you need assistance or you just want to give me feedback, I love hearing from you. Leave a comment below. Please share this video if you appreciated anything about it or you liked it. You can also reach out to me on Facebook. And I appreciate you so much. Blessings.